not scared. Please rise in body and spirit.
Welcome. We gather this afternoon in a sanctuary decorated for Christmas, for the season, on the second day of the Jewish Festival of Lights, in the season of Advent, a time in which a weary world awaits a new star of hope, a shimmering star of promise. And on this day, we celebrate a life that shimmered and shone. The life of a man known as John, Uncle John, Papa John, Opa, Sergeant Major Yarbrough, Dad. We celebrate a life that was beautifully and meaningfully lived, a life that shines brightly in our hearts still. As light is refracted through a prism to create all the colors of the world, so John's light was refracted through the prism of his life into all the aspects that we know and love. Husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, brother, neighbor, teacher, colleague, mentor, and more. And in all these different roles, John gave his whole heart. This is the life we celebrate today. I invite John's grandson, Connell McBride, to come light our chalice. These words are from Reverend Christine Robinson. In our time of grief, we light a flame of sharing, the flame of ongoing life. In this time, when we search for understanding and serenity in the face of loss, we light this sign of our quest for truth, meaning, and community. We have a resolution to begin our service today from Mayor George Smith the mayor of the town of Forest Park.
Good afternoon. Will the current and former elected officials, the current and former employees, and the residents of the town of Forest Park please stand? Thank you. Thank you. Let the family know that you're here supporting them. The 128th Psalms, verses 1 and 2 of the New King James Version states, "Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. When you eat the labor of your hands, you shall be happy, and it shall be well with you." Dozens of Forest Park residents first met John Yarbrough when they started building their homes. I was one of those. If you're building a home for the first time, it is an experience you'll never forget. More so in Forest Park because of the infrastructure. 95% of the homes require you to dig a well, and you either have a septic tank and lateral lines or the new aerobic septic system. Now, that is just one aspect of building. Being the astute architect and designer that Mr. Yarbrough was, he made you realize how your family affected the above-mentioned systems. My wife and I had a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old at the time, and Mr. Yarbrough brought up the fact that with young children, you wash more clothes, you wash more dishes, young kids tend to play in the water more, and for those reasons, you need to install a 1,000-gallon tank rather than a 7,500-gallon tank. Because of the washing and the playing in the water of young kids, you need to install more lateral lines, about 1,100 feet of lateral lines, rather than the 750 feet the designer of our plans priced out. Notice I said priced out. Of course, those wise suggestions translated into more money for parts and labor. During the building of our house, Mr. Yarbrough made other wise and costly suggestions to our humble home. But as I was talking to Carmen the other day, I realized where all that money had come from, and that was from my savings account. Now, to conclude the story, I told you about Mr. Yarbrough. 36 years later, I've only had to empty my septic tank once. And I haven't had any water rising to the surface from my lateral lines. My roof has never leaked, and it has withstood Oklahoma rainstorms, hailstorms, and high winds. So we are very appreciative for the expertise that Mr. Yarbrough insisted that we build into our house. So today I like to say, whereas Mr. Yarbrough started out as an apprentice and technical drawing instructor in Germany, and whereas in Oklahoma City he was a drafter, an educator, an estimator, and coordinator for the GM Dotson Construction Company, which developed Dotson Terrace Edition. Now, a little side note on Dotson Terrace Edition. I grew up down the street from that addition. When they started building that, they messed up our baseball and our football field. We used to play in that big field right there, and he decided he needed to build some houses there. This messed us up. But it ended up being some very beautiful homes in Dotson and Terrace, and I'm glad that he did that. It made that whole area look really nice. But back to my whereases. Whereas he was the first African-American senior facilities planner for General Electric and Honeywell. So therefore, oh, and one more thing, he also has his name on the Forest Park Administrative and Courtroom. Therefore, be it resolved, the elected officials, the employees, and the residents of the town of Forest Park embrace the family to show our support and love, because in the death of our beloved John H. Yarbrough, we have a bond that will connect us for the rest of our lives. Humbly submitted, Mayor George Smith, town of Forest Park, Oklahoma. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Leonard Benton.
Good afternoon. To the family and friends, this is a tribute to a good neighbor, John Henry Yarbrough. My family has had the good fortune of being John's neighbor for more than 35 years. When we moved in, we was greeted, we were welcomed to the community with hospitality, not only to our immediate neighbors and neighborhood, but also to the Forest Park community. Later is that Mrs. Yarbrough, Mary Ann, is that she invited me to become kind of a part of the team that would visit with new homecomers. And that was such a wonderful, enjoyable experience to have in terms of welcoming new homecomers to our community. Just in the last few years, Carmen, as the president of the Neighborhood Association, she has re-invited me to become a part of the team to go visit with newcomers. That tradition of the Yarbrough family, as of today, continues, and we are deeply appreciative for the Yarbrough family in that regard. I have also known John to be a very outstanding civic leader in the Forest Park community, that we have noted that he has had exemplary service to the Forest Park community. And he and his wife, who served for many years as a trustee for the town council, and also the representative from my particular ward, that she has given good representation along with John. And they both have been very responsible for assuring that Forest Park, that they've had the kind of public policies and programs to ensure a high standard of living within our community. And we're indeed appreciative and thankful for that. We also knew that John offered voluntarily his professional services as a building designer in the design and construction of the building that was named in his honor, the John Yarbrough City Hall. And I was so very proud to be his neighbor, to know that our City Hall was named in his honor. I also knew of his outstanding reputation with the Dotson Construction Company, being responsible for doing the basic design for many, many fine homes in an outstanding community that has provided quality home for African Americans in the Northeast Quadrant. I had also the opportunity of working with John professionally in my capacity with the Urban League. And he, at that time, was working with the nonprofit organization, the Minority Business Development Center. And in his role as a building designer, I cannot count, and none of us could count, the number of minority contractors that he assisted in terms with his plans that were competitive, that provided them with the leverage to be able to secure significant contracts in our community as minority contractors for building, for apartments, and homes. His contribution, they are kind of unsung, just truly unsung in terms of the importance of his contribution. But those of us who worked with him, we knew of his commitment. We also knew John to be an humble man. And when I say humble, I kind of think of an humble person being a person who is powerful, power under control, and not power under control for John as I saw him. He was a kind man, truly a gentleman, and that I admired very much. And he set a good example for all of us, and also a good neighbor. He also was encouraging to all of us to get involved in the community, and that even encouraged me to become the chairman of our planning commission there in Forest Park. That's what John was all about in terms of giving back to the community. John was a godly example of a good neighbor. He did not try to elevate himself over other people. He did no harm, but rather added service, leadership, kindness, joy, and happiness. John was a trusted neighbor. My family and I have truly been blessed to have had John as a good neighbor. Our condolences and prayers are extended to Mary Ann, to Carmen, to Pam, to John, and members of the family. John, his dad, has fought a good fight, and may he rest in peace. From your neighbors, Leonard, Barbara, and Quincy Benton.
Amen. You with the sad eyes, don't be discouraged, oh I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of people. You can lose sight of it all. The darkness inside you makes you feel so small. And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful like a rainbow. Show me a smile then. Don't be unhappy, can't remember when I last saw you laughing. If this world makes you crazy and you've taken all you can bear, just call me up because you know I'll be there. And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors. True colors are beautiful like a rainbow. True colors, 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 true colors shining through. And I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let them show your true colors, true colors, true colors, true colors are beautiful like a rainbow.
Let's hear from Marcus Upshaw, John's grandson.
All right. Hello. Good to see everyone here today. It's kind of tough how these things always happen kind of so fast, and before you know it, here you are. But luckily, the few days before my grandfather had passed was Thanksgiving, and I was really looking forward to it. I'd been quite busy lately, and was just looking forward to having a nice meal and spending some time with my family and catching up. And it certainly was one of the nicest Thanksgivings we'd had. And so it was good that we had one nice meal together and just a nice time with much of the family. And it was only a few days later that he had passed away, and fortunately many of us were still there with him. And it was, I didn't know exactly how to feel or what to do with myself. But someone went upstairs to his office, and they looked around and grabbed a few papers or a few pictures, and started kind of just sharing the stories of their memories of my grandfather. And that was really nice. That really helped a lot. And so I thought I would, kind of thinking over the last week and a half of what I might say, I thought I would share some memories of mine with my grandfather, with everyone. And so one of the first things that kept popping back into my mind was whenever we would go out to eat often, and we were at Panera Bread, and I looked at my grandfather, and he was wearing this shirt that we had gotten him. Must have been for Father's Day, but it said, "This is what a cool grandpa looks like." And a little bit corny, but not at all on him. And I just, I think back now to myself, and I'd say, certainly a cool grandpa, and I could not argue with that at all. And it just made me happy that he would wear that shirt and would proudly wear that shirt, and that it meant something to him that we appreciated him as a grandpa, and he appreciated us as grandchildren. Another story that I remember was I must have been in elementary school or so, but I found out what a boomerang was. All right, it's one of those things you throw it, and I guess only certain people, if they throw it, it comes back to them. There's a trick to it. But I was at my grandparents' house, and I was probably telling everybody, man, I need a boomerang. This is the coolest thing. Like, you guys got to get me one. And so my grandpa said, you know, there's a set of encyclopedias over there in the formal living room. Why don't you go see if you can find boomerang in there? And so I did, and there was a little picture of a boomerang in there. And so next thing I knew, he had out some graph paper, and he said, all right, well, trace that picture there. And it was a tiny little picture. And then he had come up with he scaled it up, come up with a life-size shape of that boomerang. And I don't remember exactly how long later, but a few weeks went by, and I went back to my grandparents' house, and he had made out of some wood that he found somewhere, a little boomerang off of this model. And I just remember appreciating that so much, because I thought, you know, somebody's got to go buy me this boomerang. Like, we got to go to the store. And he said, no, we got everything we need here. And he made it, and he gave it to me. There's a few other things. My grandfather wasn't always the most talkative. Sometimes he was. But there were many times where he would kind of tell stories of his, his time growing up or his life. And one that I heard many times and always appreciated hearing was about his work. He was, when he was young, he was he was an assistant or an apprentice to a shoe repair guy, and he just always would say, you know, whenever you have a job, it doesn't matter what it is, you know, you shoe repair or an architect or what have you, to always do your best, because, you know, that's what your life is at that moment is that job. And, you know, are you going to do the best with your life, or are you going to do less than that? And that always stuck with me, is that he said, you know, whenever he worked there, that people would always come in and they'd say, I want that guy to fix my shoes, you know. Let's see. And I got one last thing here to share, and I saved this one for last. And I don't know how to put this really in a succinct term, but just my grandfather's laugh and his smile. That's something that I'll never forget. He was always was able to be in a good mood, and always found a way to kind of make a joke or to make you smile, and never at anyone else's expense. But just a very wholesome sense of humor, and very friendly. You know, like a number of places that we went to eat. You know, there was a Mexican spot that we loved, and Musashi's was always a favorite of ours. And, you know, we'd go in, and then he'd talk to one of the workers there. You know, they had become friends over the few times that we went in there. And there was one guy at Musashi's, and he would always try out his Japanese, speaking with that guy, and that always was a nice thing. And then at the Mexican restaurant, they'd always come in, and they're always happy to see my grandfather. And they had all these chairs, and they had all these paintings, and they had a specific chair that was for my grandfather, and they had a painting on it. But these were just some of the memories that I could think back to, and I wanted to share with everyone. And let's see, I'll end it. I'm going to play something on the piano here. It's a piece, it's kind of one that I had been working on recently, and was looking at it after my grandfather had passed, and it to me is a real beautiful song. And what kind of sets it apart, I guess, is that there's really so much to it. There's, you know, more than I could sit and tell someone about. And so I thought that would be an appropriate piece to play in tribute to him. So, it is. Thank you.
have a remembrance from niece Anne-Catherine Rigal, read by John's granddaughter, Olivia Lepshaw.
Okay. Dear Uncle John, I remember you as many as my other uncles and aunts from the years of my early childhood. At that time, we all met in the Friedhofstrasse in the city of Eislingen in southern Germany, where Aunt Marianne had grown up along with her brother Siegfried, and later her younger sisters Iris, Roswitha, and Ingrid. There were great memories of joy for all of us, these large family meetings. We were chatting together, going in, going out of the house of Oma and Opa, standing next to the cars and to the Werkstatt in the sunshine. We, the American families, Yarbrough and Batten. We, the German ones, Kauderer and Schneebeck. We, the French Regal. Of course, all my feelers were in action. I was sensitive to languages, to fashions, to manners, to all these elements that create the identity of a person or of a place. I had noticed that, along with being a person of great calm, gentleness, and natural authority, you were imposing because of your intellectual qualities. The clearness with which you expressed yourself in German or English, your intellectual approach of the topics that you, adults, discussed around the table, and in addition to that, your wit and humor, your interest for others that gave access to you and created a strong personal tie. In you, one could feel a soul of honesty, of discipline, of commitment, of great intelligence, and of an inflexible will. At that time, I didn't know that you had reached the grade of colonel in the Army, but it wouldn't have surprised me. In you, I admired you throughout my entire life, and at a certain point, we started a correspondence together. I felt extremely lucky and grateful for this privileged relationship from mind to mind. From time to time, I used to send you a letter or respond to one of yours, and after a while would one day arrive an envelope with my address clearly written in the center, kindly starting with Mademoiselle Anne-Catherine Regal, decorated with collection stamps, and in the upper corner, written by your splendid capital writing, John H. Yarbrough, North Forest Park Drive, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73121, USA. This address I know by heart, as you can imagine. Airmail, written in red and capitals, was clearly visible. I have all your letters, as the ones of all my family and friends, and I want to assemble them one day in our correspondence book. These letters are one of my greatest treasures. May I quote you? Now I'm sitting here reading one of your letters, which I thought to be your most recent one. It is most delightful, and I thoroughly enjoy reading it all over again. Your letters have the flavor of short stories or excerpts from novels, which make enjoyable reading. This you wrote on August 6, 1993, some 30 years ago. Dear Uncle John, I could write exactly these lines about your letters. Each of them was a present to me, sharing some pages of the life of the Yarbrough family, some of your concerns, and your poetic glance on the world with me. We know that the idea of time is partly a construction of the mind, and that we keep in us all the moments of the past in our memory box, even if we are unaware of it. So I close that one, but your letter of the 6th August stays in front of me, and I jump over time to be back in present. And to end with, I must say how joyful I was when last month, on October 18th, Aunt Marianne and cousins Carmen and Pamela had the delicate thought to bring the phone to your ear so that you could wish me with your unforgettable voice. Happy birthday, Aunt Katrine. Again, I'm grateful for this. Just now, I'm crying and I'm missing you, but death is part of life. We have to accept that. The candle that burns in us gets blown at some point, and then we live with the memories of the dear ones that have gone, but stay present in our heart. Rest in peace, dear Uncle John. Opa, I know that you'll be one of those luminous souls who will welcome me at the threshold of the afterworld. Dear Aunt Marianne, dear Carmen, Pammy, John Allen and families, dear relatives and friends of John H. Yarbrough, I share your grief and I hold hands in communion with you. With love, Anne Katrine.
And John's sister-in-law, Ingrid Rigal.
Good afternoon. Well, I am the French family because I'm the sister-in-law from John, and I wish to say a few words about our story, our family story. Dear John, I've never told you about the deep impression we've got when you entered into the Kauder family settled in southern Germany. It was in 1957. I was nearby 10 years old. What happened was like a movie for me. On a bright shining Sunday of May, at 3 p.m., a long, brand new, red and white Oldsmobile arrived in front of our house. With my two older sisters, I was hidden behind the windows of our parents' room, expecting what would happen. The visit of an American officer was announced by our oldest sister, who would ask for her hand. The heart of us three was beating like a drum until you appears. We saw a good-looking officer in great uniform with white gloves opening the passenger door to help gracefully our sister out of the car, and then going ring the bell. What would happen when a young African-American officer is meeting a 49-year-old German father and ancient soldier 1 decade after Second World War? We know what happened. It took you not long to convince our parents to agree your request. They were impressed as you spoke a fluent German, and you convinced them by your perfect manners. That was the beginning of an extraordinary family story over 66 years. Since then, I married a Frenchman, and we shared so many remembrances with you in Germany, France, OKC, and around. Thanks to you, thanks to your jointed views and efforts, dear John and dear Marian, a family bond has flourished between the two sides of the Atlantic. And we gained a lot from your both many-sided talents and experiences. Dear John, I call you a pioneer. You never frightened in army where you were a hero in the Korea and Japan War. That brought you to the highest grade of a sergeant major. Then you decided to marry Marian, my sister, a German blonde beauty. Then you chose to become an architect, and you were also a successful teacher, as you heard before. Then you decided to create a civil administration for the area of Forest Park, and you built a city town hall and also a fire department. You created also a social network through the Forest Park newsletter. And finally, you always took attention to your family and to your friends. You could manage all those efforts because your wife Marian stayed on your side, and your 3 children, Carmen, Pamela, and John Ellen. The same was with your grandkids and great-grandson Elliot. Dear John, you are a model how to live a good and plain life. Over 93 years made out of courage and love. God bless you, and God bless us.
And we'll hear from John's niece, Karen Schneebeck.
So hello everybody. I'm from the German part of the family, and I am not a great speaker, so I make this quick. I just have a little something to say. And dear Uncle John, actually there's just one thing I want to say, and that's thank you. The last time I was here in Oklahoma City is 30 years ago. You and Tante Marianne, you took me in when I had a hard time at home. You helped me to find a new perspective and direction for my life. And I'm sure that it wasn't much fun because I was a very, very difficult 19-year-old. Without you, I don't know if I would have been able to find a good way of living. So thank you. I owe you a lot, and I really love you very much.
And we'll hear from Olivia.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn things that I'll never know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you.
And we'll hear now from John's children, Carmen, Pam, John.
Good afternoon. We're so delighted to see those of you here that our dad meant something to and to share in his celebration of his life. Our dad was well known for his letters to family and friends, as you've heard some of them already. And so now we have one for our dad. Dear Dad, what does one do when someone who's been with you your whole life is gone? What are we going to do without you? You held me as a baby, nurtured and guided me through childhood and on into adulthood. You taught us so much. You taught us to make the most of every single day, that there is much to do, and to always do your best. You taught us patience and how to reason, especially with homework. That always had to be done before we went to bed each night. If we had a question, especially in the subject of math, like a story problem or one of those long problems that took up a whole page, well, we were in for the long haul with our dad because he would explain the concepts. We would sometimes have to go back to previous chapters to make sure we had that right before we got the other one. So we could spend an hour on one problem. We tried not to do that too often. He taught us to pursue our dreams. He taught us how to make our beds, military style, with those straight corners, crisp folds, and about the importance of family and celebrations. How to fix things yourself, like minor home repairs. Don't pay somebody else to fix what you can fix. And car care. We had to learn how to change a tire. We needed to learn how to change the oil. Simple things that we could do with the car and keeping gas in the car. I can't always say that I followed that rule. There's been a time or two or three that I've said, please, Lord, let me make it to the gas station. To work hard, to use common sense. Sometimes that was in question for me. That in life we all have responsibilities. He taught us about giving back to the community, and you've heard from Mayor George, from Mr. Benton about that. And I remember when you were the PTA president at Dewey Elementary, and we sang O Tannenbaum in German. And even though maybe we didn't really want to do it, we were a little bit scared to do it. We did perform it, and after we did it, we were happy and satisfied, and we felt good about ourselves that we had done it. And I remember you as Cub Scout master for John Allen. That was at Pleasant Hill Elementary School. I remember those Pinewood Derbies, and you and John Allen working on making those little speedsters. And for all the many, many years that you spent serving Forest Park, helping residents to do the right thing, for the sake of the town and also for themselves, being a good neighbor, sharing the town's growth from starting out meeting at the mayor's home to having and designing the town hall with our police, fire, and administrative buildings. You wrote the town newsletter. Now I write our neighborhood association newsletter, and I do what I can to make Forest Park a better place. You and Mom always made time to volunteer at our schools, church, and community. You also taught us about style and having a little pizzazz, like wearing bolo ties, which I have one around my wrist. Marcus and Connell are wearing one today, one of his, and cufflinks. He loved cufflinks too. And one of our neighbors, the neighbors from my parents across the street, Leonard, always said, "Looking sharp, Mr. Yarbrough, looking sharp." I think your creativity and artistic abilities rubbed off on me. There are so many ways I followed in your footsteps that I never fully realized. Photography, creating things with my hands, food presentation, he always did that for celebrations. Everything had to be just so-so. Reading, a love of languages, developing a taste for different types of music. That took a little while. Travel and seeing other countries and cultures, knowing that people are different yet the same wherever you go. Poetry and writing. You taught us to be on our toes with dominoes and Scrabble. You didn't let the color of your skin deter you from pursuing anything that you wanted. You were the first in so many things. So many people have told us what an impact you've made in their lives by the time that you spent with them. You made long-lasting friendships wherever you went, from your world travels to your and Mom's daily walks at the zoo with staff always waiting for you to come. While your mind struggled with memory issues these last few years, you were still your gentle, kind self and witty as ever. While I will now talk to you up there and ask questions, I know that I have the answers from all the countless things you've taught me my whole life. I hope to live up to your legacy and expectations. I will miss the way you make up songs on the spot, your rhymes, your gentle presence, and your chuckles when you get a kick out of something. It has been a privilege of my life to help care for you and give back just a little of your loving care. Thank you for being a stellar example of what it means to be a good human being. And as my Aunt Erie said, we hit the jackpot when we got you. Good night, God. Good night, Dad. Sleep well. I'll see you in the morning.
And I think Carmen covered mostly everything, but there are a couple things that I'll add. So I've been staying with my parents pretty much since March when my mom fell and broke her pelvis, kind of the start of the journey. And I treasured the time that I spent with my parents. So it was extra time to get to hold my dad's hand, something I hadn't done really in a long time. So he woke up often he woke up during the night, and sometimes I was tired to get too tired to get up and go back to bed, and get up and go back to bed, so I just stay in the room and sit and hold hands with him. And sometimes on days when he wasn't doing so well, I'd hear my mom, and she's like, somebody come, they need to come in the room. Wasn't sure how my dad was going to fare. And I heard a few times he said, well, sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days. You just try to do the best that you can to make everything the best that you can. And on some days he said, well, one occasion he said, I think I've done just about all I can do in my life. I've done about all that I came here to do. And my mom was standing there with him, and she said how much she loved him and how she had always felt safe and loved by him during their marriage. And though they have had some ups and downs, that they had a good marriage, and she appreciated him for that, and I appreciated our dad for that as well, for, again, always being there for him and being there for us. And the other thing, even so, some days his memory was not as good as other days, but he would always ask us, is there something I can do for you? So even in the last couple of weeks before he died, he would smile and say, let me know if there's something that I can do for you. Or he'd say, I see you guys working hard in the kitchen. I want to get up and do something. So a couple of times he got up, and I'd get some silverware or something for him to dry so he could help. You know, he always wanted to be a help, and it was hard for him to sit there and just watch us do things. That was tough. And the last thing, he loved vanilla ice cream. So he asked us every day, he's like, sometimes he might not remember, and he might not say Pam or Carmen. He may say, excuse me, miss. It's like, could you get me just one scoop of vanilla ice cream? And I'd say, well, Dad, it's breakfast, or Dad, it's lunch. You can have some after dinner. And then he'd get his ice cream, and we'd try to keep the plate at his place, because usually he ate that scoop of ice cream, and then he'd said, but I haven't had my ice cream yet. When is that coming? So I hope where he is now that he gets all the vanilla ice cream that he wants. And I'll miss seeing him in his special places. Seeing him in the chair outside waiting for us to come, at his place at the dinner table, his place at the bar, and his special chairs. When we have Christmas this year, it will be empty without him there. Thank you. Oh, wait.
Lala.
Would you please rise in body or in spirit? We'll sing hymn number 199 and the gray hardbound hymnal, Precious Lord, Take My Hand.
I
Please be seated.
You already know that John Yarbrough was a man of many accomplishments. From a child born in Arkansas who lost his mother at a young age, traveled about with his preacher grandfather, and ran away from home to go to Kansas City. He grew into a man accomplished in the fields of architecture, drawing, and design. He served his country as a right-hand man to Army generals. He traveled the world throughout Europe and Asia and North and Central America. He was a teacher and a mentor to students in Germany and Oklahoma. He was a proud father and grandfather and great-grandfather, a loving husband, and truly a pillar of his community, serving as everything from editor of the town newsletter to a Cub Scout master to an advocate of small business and fair housing practices. All of this faced with the steep and jagged barriers of racism. But among the many accomplishments of John's life, one that you won't find in his obituary was that he read Miguel de Cervantes's Don Quixote in the original Spanish. In that novel, we find this great line, quote, "Take my advice and live a long, long time, because the maddest thing a man can do in this life is to let himself die." Now, while we wish that John could still be with us, we must admit that 93 is a good, long life. But more important than how long he lived was how he lived. Because John used the time that he had in the best way he could. He treasured the time that he had with the people he loved. He made a point of telling them what they meant to him while he was with them. And he stayed connected when he was apart from friends and loved ones, as you've heard, writing long, old-fashioned letters that sometimes included little poems about small events and moments of time. When he worked, he committed himself to doing the best he could, to make his clients as happy as he could, so much so that he inspired others to work harder and better too. But he wasn't the kind of person who sacrificed his family for the sake of his work. As you heard from Carmen, his kids knew that if they came to him with a question or with a request for help, with their math homework, for example, they weren't going to be able to go to bed until that question or that math problem had been thoroughly explored and explained. No how or why could be left unanswered. And he loved his beautiful and wonderful Marianne with all his heart. Once he wrote out a check to her in the amount of love unlimited. He didn't just travel, he became proficient in multiple languages, and he made friends wherever he went. He didn't just enjoy listening to the birds, he wanted to learn their songs. When he taught, he fully committed himself to his students. When he cooked, he didn't just make food. He worried about the presentation of the food he made, thinking like an architect, concerned about qualities like color and form and shape and style. Time was precious to him, but so was space. When he designed buildings or spaces, he tried to make use of every single little nook or cranny. John worked hard not to waste anything. Not space, not time with the people he loved, not his own talent and energy, which he committed to doing the right thing, even when no one else was looking. There's another quote from Don Quixote that seems so appropriate to John. Until death, it is all life. John Yarbrough was not a big man, but he had a big life. To his family and his closest friends, I know that you will miss him so much. But in the saddest times, I hope you can remember the joy. His silly songs, his rhymes, that little chuckle. And know that in your joy, in your good work, in your commitments to others, something in him lives on. Would you please join me in prayer? Source of infinite love, God of many names, may they who knew John the best and loved him most deeply find comfort in one another. May they also find comfort in the larger community that grieves with them. Source of love, we give thanks for the life of John Yarbrough. We give thanks that he was and is a part of our family, our church, our community, and that he made our lives better through his friendship and care. For his love, for his generosity, for his compassion, for his sense of humor, for his hard work, for his sacrifices to this country, for his commitment to his family, for all of this and so much more, we say thank you, thank you. Amen. After our service, all are invited to join the family for a reception in Daniel Hall. Go through these doors and down the hall and to your right. The poet Langston Hughes wrote, quote, "In time of silver rain, the earth puts forth new life again. Green grasses grow and flowers lift their heads, and over all the plain, the wonder spreads of life, of life, of life." May we commit ourselves to living until we die, to telling those we love how much they mean to us, to appreciating the gifts we've been given, to giving our best to others always, and to treasuring this great miracle of life, of life, of life. May it be so. I invite you to rise as the family departs, and once they've departed, we'll invite you to go into Daniel Hall.